Greetings, gardeners. Well, as you can see from my umbrella overhead, we're having another one of those fine rainy mornings here in Pune. We look forward to them. You know, the rest of you who are living under drought and haven't had a drop of rain, I'm sorry. And those of you who have far too much rain and are flooding out, I'm even more sorry for you. Weather seems to be getting pretty crazy. I noticed they had warnings of snowstorms there around Chicago area, which I lived there for years, and the latest storm I ever saw was April 15th. So things are getting a little bit weird, aren't they, weather-wise? Here in Pune, they're about the same. Drizzly. It's getting lighter all the time, and I think maybe in just a moment I might be able to walk out here, because today I just want to talk about stuff and things, this and that. I have a whole bunch of little tiny individual type things that I'd like to discuss in the garden. Let's start off this morning, wet or dry, with the jaboticabas. I am so happy. My jaboticabas have finally come to the point where they're beginning to produce enough fruit to be worthwhile, and I've also seen that aside from all the special ones I'd grown recently, that the two of the older trees I have are definitely two different types. I have a large and a small fruit. They're both delicious. Yeah, right here we're looking at the younger of my two trees. It was planted from seed about 7 years ago. The crop was much heavier. If you look down there on the ground, you'll see they're laying all around from the birds, darn things. And then we've been in here ripping at it. I've had my friends ripping at it, so it's getting thinned out pretty good, but it's really a nice crop. This is the first time around for this tree that it actually turned around and made a pretty significant amount of fruit. And over here, this is the older of the two trees, and it didn't fruit nearly as heavy. It's got enough fruit in it to bother picking it. But what I did notice is the fruit is larger than the other tree, and the flavor is slightly different. Well, it's getting brighter. The sun's starting to come out. That's the way it is around here. If you don't like the weather the way it is, move 1 mile or wait 15 minutes. It'll change. And so I've got myself a mitt full of this here, and these here are from the slightly smaller fruited tree that has a larger quantity. And that is good. Oh. Wow. Absolutely delicious. I don't care for the skin much. Little bit of it. A little bit of the skin mixed in with the sweet pulp and juice, because the skin has all the tannic acid in it, and a little bit of it gives character to the fruit. Too much of it I find too sour. Now here I have from the larger fruited tree. That one was pretty good, but actually this time the smaller one tasted a little bit better. Yeah, that's interesting. The last couple times I tried the trees, I really thought that the larger fruited older tree probably had a little bit better tasting fruit, but this morning I'm almost getting the opposite reaction. They're both really good. Actually, I think the smaller one was tastier today. Here I have a whole handful of the blobby, the pulp-covered fruit seeds from the jaboticaba, and I've had people ask me before about, do I need to clean the seed? Does the seed have to be dried, etc., etc.? And no, that's in most cases, especially with tropical fruits, cleaning and drying the seed is often detrimental. Sometimes it's absolutely a death sentence if you do that. But this time around, I've got a lot of experience in growing jaboticaba seeds. Joe had imported so many of them from Brazil. And so at this point in time, I believe I planted out pretty close to a dozen different varieties of that plant and watched them grow. Well, I have never seen anything happen like happened from this tree this year. When I went through and I extracted seed, and they looked just like that, I tossed them into soil as they were, with the pulp on the outside. Germination was the best I have ever seen on jaboticaba, and fast too.
Yep, right there you can see all them little jaboticaba seedlings popping up. They're coming up over here in that pot right there. This seed has only been in the soil for about 2 weeks, and so that's really, really quick. I also had one of the viewers who had purchased this seed from me off the web who got back to me this morning and let me know it all came up real nice. So if there's anybody over there that wants to grow jaboticaba and needs really fresh, good seed, we got it.
I'd like to talk about mangoes today. Usually I don't. It's pretty common knowledge here that mango trees do not fruit on the eastern side of the Big Island. The trees grow fine. We have huge, huge trees, but unless you're way down like in Kalapana where they get half the rain, otherwise what happens to us here is that the South Indian mangoes that are used for most of the breeding, if it rains during the flower season, the flowers are usually destroyed, so you get no fruit. Well, it rains in Hilo all the time. It's basically the rainiest city of its size in the United States of America. And so there's a problem with mango flower setting. Well, this year, I know my good friend Joe Hewitt and I had noticed that we were experiencing almost a month-long drought during the period of time when mangoes came into flower around here. So we were going, hey, I wonder. Sure enough, I was driving down Kakawanoa Street in Hilo yesterday, coming from the airport, heading towards Kilauea, and on the left-hand side, I spotted 2 mango trees in people's yards that were hanging, loaded with big old, fat, beautiful mangoes. Some of them turning reddish already. Not ripe. They're green yet, but holy smoke, was there a lot in the trees. I've never seen this. I've been around here for quite a while. Never seen that before. Then I was heading from Hilo to Cal and on Highway 11, right, and they got mango trees right in the middle of the highway there. Sure enough, those are seedling trees, and the fruit was smaller, more like Kalapana or snake mangoes. But, whoa, they were full of mangoes too. And so it looks like we're going to have ourselves a mango year here on the east side of Hawaii. So I will never say it again. I'm never going to say that mangoes will not fruit in the east side of the island. I will say that they don't fruit very often. But, stuff happens. So there's a little of this and that. And then, yesterday I was reviewing some videos on YouTube about people who were doing legal cannabis cultivation in the Pacific Northwest, doing it outdoors and trying to see what sorts of systems are these guys using, because that whole industry with the medical cannabis and all had been taken inside in warehouses under lights and so on, and it's fine and dandy, it's what it is, but so many of the people involved in this, because that's the way they started, they really don't do any dirt farming at all. And there's a guy up there near Medford, Oregon, who has a family history of cannabis growing. His dad was an outlaw years ago, and then they went into medical cannabis later and finally started growing recreational cannabis. They had thousands of plants in the fields outside of Medford, right in the ground. And he was using some really interesting systems. It was a very good video compared to most of the stuff I see about cannabis on YouTube. So much of it is, guys, hey, look at this bud, man, that kind of stuff. Now, this guy was a real farmer. He was pro. I was impressed with the equipment, the way he was doing things. It was really exciting. Well, he started talking about his grandma having cancer, and that because of this, they were treating grandma with alkalized water. All right. Now, supposedly this helped, I guess, reduce some of the infections and pathogens in her system. And so they bought this machine that would create water of literally any pH from about 2.5, which is heading down towards vinegar, all the way on up to 11, which is really basic stuff. All right. And they... He was using the alkalized water on his grandma with her cancer, and suddenly one day he said, if this stuff will kill off the pathogens in my grandma's bloodstream, maybe I can use it on my cannabis crop. And I said, wow, that's very revolutionary idea. And so what he decided to do was he'd set the machinery up one way, and they'd produce acidulated water at about 2.5 pH. They'd put it in sprayers. They'd go out and they'd spray the crop with the acidulated water, and that was to control pests. That if they had, like aphids or mites or something like this, that real low pH water would really mess with them and knock them out. Then, within 5 minutes, he would follow it with a spray of alkaline water at about pH 11, I guess. He didn't quite say. Anyway, it was a high pH water, and that was being used to knock out bacteria, viruses, pathogens, fungi in particular, fungi that were on the leaves of the plants. And the acid water might have burned the leaves, but since they come back in 5 minutes with the alkali water and they spray it, well, that neutralizes the acid reaction and bring things back towards 6 or 7 probably. And I'm familiar with an old Rosarian technique where rose growers will use a mixture of water, horticultural oil, and baking soda as a way to control mildew in particular on rose bushes. We used to promote this idea as a home remedy when I was in the nursery in California, and I personally have used this in the past. I'll use something like a teaspoon of peanut oil or canola oil. I like to use the vegetable oil for this. And about a teaspoon or so of baking soda in a quart of water, and then spray it. Now the oil will slick the leaves so the mildew spores don't hold on very well, but more importantly, I believe it will fix the baking soda to the leaf of the plants so that it kind of stays there for a while and has a little bit of residual effect. And I found that it's quite effective. And so this gentleman's idea that using alkalized water to control pathogens on his crop it is valid. It's a valid thing. I mean, I'm sure that it's actually doing something for him. I thought it was really groundbreaking because, you think of all the chemicals that they spray on crops. My goodness, the cannabis industry, because this is medical or it's recreational and it's being consumed, you can't wash it. There's nothing you can do to clean stuff off. It's not like if you got a tomato, or an apple, maybe you could scrub it or peel it. And so if you get something nasty on the outside, it's really not going to matter much. But with the cannabis, you can't do that. And so this is very revolutionary that he's looking at these things of just treating it with water at different pHs. He claims it's working for him. I haven't got any problems with either pathogens or with pests. I was impressed. I thought it was an amazing idea, and I have not heard it from any other place. It just happened to be something in the course of this interview that popped up, and I went, whoa! Duh! And as I say, if I hadn't already had experience with using baking soda for this similar application, I might have thought it was kind of snake oil, but I'm pretty sure he's onto something there. And thank you to the cannabis farmers in Oregon for coming up with such an outstanding idea. There's no reason why we couldn't be using the same approach on many other crops and ornamentals that have similar types of problems. And so I think it's got wide-ranging application. We just had the Merry Monarch Hula Festival. It's going on today. This is the largest Hawaiian dance and music festival that exists pretty much anywhere in the planet. Hula is the center of life here in Hilo, and they bring people from all over the world for this. And so that's brought a lot of folks into town. Things are happening here. It's very exciting. We're even getting a halfway decent weather forecast out of Hilo because the guys from the stations in Oahu have come down to Hilo for the week to hang out with Merry Monarch, and they're actually reporting on the local weather. How about that for a change? Okay, so aloha, y'all hang loose, and until next time.